America and Iran fight, almost no one is noticing who's actually winning. What if I told you the biggest winner of this war isn't even fighting in it? Hi, you are watching Abby Martin View's YouTube channel, and welcome to another video. Today, I want to talk about something almost no one is paying attention to. Right now, everyone is focused on the conflict between the United States and Iran. People are asking the same questions. Who is winning? Will the U.S. overpower Iran? Will Iran shut down the Strait of Hormuz and shake the global economy? Will this turn into a full-scale ground war? These are important questions, but today, we're asking a different one. While America and Iran are fighting, who is actually winning? At first, this might sound strange, because there's one country that isn't even part of this war: China. So how can a country that isn't fighting still be winning? Because in geopolitics, the smartest move is often not to fight at all. The real strategy is to let your rivals weaken each other while you quietly grow stronger. And right now, that's exactly what China is doing. Let's break this down step by step. First, what happens if America wins? Imagine the U.S. successfully defeats Iran. The government collapses, a new friendly regime is installed. America gains control over oil and the Strait of Hormuz. Sounds like a clear victory, right? Not exactly. Because winning a war like this comes at a massive cost. We're talking about trillions of dollars. The Iraq War alone cost around $2 trillion, and that wasn't even a clear success. A war with Iran would be even more expensive, and here's the problem. America is already drowning in debt. Every missile, every operation, every military move is funded by borrowed money, and as the U.S. spends more, its financial strength weakens. Meanwhile, China doesn't spend a dollar. China doesn't lose a single soldier, but it watches as America drains its own economy. A weaker America is a strategic advantage for China. Now let's look at the second scenario. What if America fails? What if Iran survives, or even forces the U.S. to step back? This outcome is even more powerful for China, because it shakes the foundation of America's global power. At the center of that power is something called the petrodollar system. For decades, global oil has been traded in US dollars. This created constant global demand for the dollar, but this system depends on one key promise: that America can protect global oil supply routes. Now imagine that promise breaks. If Iran can disrupt the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important oil routes in the world, then trust in that system starts to collapse. And when trust collapses, countries start looking for alternatives. China has been preparing for this. For years, it has been pushing for oil trade in its own currency. If the dollar weakens, China's influence grows, again, without firing a single shot. But this goes even deeper. This isn't just about oil. It's about the future of the global economy. China has spent years building massive trade networks across Asia, Europe, and Africa. At the center of many of these routes is Iran. Iran is a key link connecting East and West. That's why China has invested heavily in its economy. Even during sanctions, China continues to trade with Iran, especially in oil. And here's the irony: a war meant to weaken Iran can actually strengthen its economic ties with China, which means China's influence grows even more. Now think about how the rest of the world is reacting. Countries are watching this conflict very carefully. They're asking questions like, can America be trusted? Is it stable? Is it predictable? Because wars don't just destroy countries, and they also destroy reputation. And when trust in one power declines, another power steps in. China offers a different message: trade, investment, infrastructure, no direct interference. For many developing countries, that looks like a better deal, and slowly, quietly, more nations begin shifting in that direction. History shows this pattern again and again. When two major powers fight, they often weaken themselves, and a third power rises in the background. It happened in ancient times, it happened in modern history, and now it may be happening again. So when we ask, who is winning this war? It's not a simple answer. It's not just about battles or territory, because the real winner is the one gaining power without fighting. America is spending, Iran is surviving, but China is growing stronger. And that's the real story most people are missing. And here's where things get even more interesting, Pau, because this shift isn't happening loudly. It's not happening with headlines or breaking news alerts. It's happening quietly in trade deals, in infrastructure projects, and in long-term strategy. While the world is distracted by war, China is building ports, building railways, building energy routes, connecting countries across continents. And one of the biggest advantages China has right now is time. Unlike countries caught in conflict, China isn't reacting, it's planning. 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead, even decades ahead. Now compare that to a country involved in war forces short-term decisions, emergency actions, unpredictable outcomes, and over time, that creates instability. Investors become uncertain, allies become cautious, and smaller countries start looking for safer partnerships. And this is exactly where China steps in. Not with military force, but with economic influence. Think about it. If you're a developing country, what matters more? Bombs and conflicts, or roads, trade, and investment? China understands this, and that's why its strategy is different. Instead of dominating through force, it expands through dependence. Countries that trade with China, build with China, and borrow from China slowly become tied to its system. And over time, that creates influence just as powerful as military control. Now let's talk about energy, because energy is at the center of everything. Factories need it. Transport depends on it. Entire economies run on it. Right now, the war is disrupting global energy stability, prices fluctuate, supply chains get strained, and uncertainty grows. But China has positioned itself differently. By maintaining relationships with energy-producing countries, it secures access even during crisis, sometimes at lower prices, sometimes through alternative deals. And this creates a powerful advantage. Lower energy costs mean cheaper production. Cheaper production means more competitive exports. So while other economies struggle, China keeps producing, keeps exporting, and keeps growing. And then there's another layer to this, global perception. Because power isn't just about money or military, it's also about how the world sees you. Right now, the image of global leadership is shifting. Countries are starting to question who brings stability, who brings opportunity, who brings risk, and perception can reshape alliances faster than any war. Because in the modern world, influence doesn't always come from force, it comes from trust. And as trust shifts, so does power. Now zoom out for a moment and look at the bigger picture. This isn't just about one war. This isn't just about one region. This is about a global transition from one dominant power to a world where influence is shared, competed for, and constantly shifting. And in that kind of world, the smartest player isn't always the strongest one. It's the one who knows when to act and when to stay completely still. So as this conflict continues, the real question isn't just who wins on the battlefield. The real question is who is shaping the future while everyone else is distracted. Because by the time the war ends, the balance of power may have already changed. Not with an explosion, but with quiet, calculated moves. And once that shift is complete, it's very hard to reverse. So the next time you hear about this war, don't just ask who is fighting. Ask yourself something deeper. Who is benefiting the most without even being in it? Because sometimes the biggest victories in history are the ones no one notices until it's too late. And if you think this shift is happening slowly, think again. Because global power doesn't always change over centuries anymore. Sometimes it shifts within a single decade. And wars like this accelerate everything. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that power is only about military strength. But in today's world, power is far more complex. It's about supply chains, it's about technology, it's about who controls production, resources, and distribution. And this is where China has been focusing its efforts for years, not just on building an army, but on building an entire system. Take manufacturing, for example. China is often called the factory of the world. From electronics to machinery, from consumer goods to industrial equipment, a massive portion of global production runs through China. Now think about what happens during war. Supply chains get disrupted, shipping routes become unstable, costs increase. Companies around the world start looking for stability, and stability often leads back to the same place, China. Because while other regions are dealing with conflict, sanctions, or political uncertainty, China continues operating at scale. Factories keep running, exports keep moving, infrastructure keeps expanding. And over time, this consistency builds something incredibly powerful: dependence. The more the world depends on one country for goods, materials, and production, the more influence that country gains. Not through force, but through necessity. Now let's talk about technology, because this is another battlefield that most people don't see. While global attention is focused on war, China is investing heavily in future technologies: artificial intelligence, semiconductors, renewable energy, telecommunications. These are not just industries. They are the foundation of future power. Whoever leads in these areas will shape the next generation of the global economy.